If you want to know what a cover-up looks like in 2025, don't watch a movie, watch a PDF. When the U.S. Justice Department finally opened its shiny new Epstein files website, thousands of pages poured out, almost all of them bathed in black ink with entire 100-page documents turned into solid rectangles. The law that forced this release was sold to the public as a transparency bomb. What Trump's dossier actually delivered looks a lot more like a smoke machine aimed straight at his own base. Here's the headline that sent everybody back to their keyboards. The brand new December dump is full of Bill Clinton and almost completely silent on Donald Trump. Search the Justice Department's online library of this new batch for Trump, and you get nothing. No new references, no fresh screenshots, no internal emails about him, despite the fact that previous Epstein releases, including flight manifests, have already confirmed his name on Epstein's plane years ago. At the same time, this release is packed with images and evidence featuring Clinton, a Democrat Republicans have demonized for decades. If you think that sounds less like blind justice and more like opposition research, you're not alone. To understand why this Trump-free dump is such a big deal, you have to remember how we got here. After years of partial disclosures and conspiracy theories, Congress finally passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act in November with overwhelming bipartisan support. The law ordered the Justice Department to disclose all Epstein-related records by a set deadline, including internal DOJ reports, emails, and documents detailing how the investigation was handled. The Trump administration fought that bill for months, insisting that no more files should be made public and warning of privacy issues and national security risks. It took a revolt by Democrats and a handful of Republicans, led in the House by Thomas Massie and in the Senate by Chuck Schumer, to jam the law through and force the president's hand. So when Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche wrote to Congress just before the deadline, he framed the release as an act of noble transparency, noting that over 200 victims or family members needed to be carefully redacted to protect their privacy. The law also allowed the department to withhold material that would jeopardize active investigations. That's fair, up to a point. What lawmakers didn't expect was that DOJ would use those carve-outs like a pressure washer. Some of the release documents are literally 100 pages of solid black. Entire categories of internal material the law explicitly demanded, internal DOJ reports, emails, decision memos, simply do not appear in this first batch at all. And then there is the politics sitting right on the surface. The same White House that swore for months that no more Epstein files would ever see the light suddenly rushed out a statement claiming the dump proves how transparent Trump is and slamming previous Democratic administrations for not doing the same. The statement somehow forgot to mention one detail. The only reason any of this is public is because Congress forced the administration's hand over its objections. For an audience that doesn't read the fine print, the message is simple: Trump is exposing Clinton. For anyone tracking the legislation, the message is closer to Trump got dragged into complying, then tried to weaponize the release. Anyway, the content itself tells you what game is being played. This new DOJ library includes images that show Bill Clinton in a swimming pool with Ghislaine Maxwell and another blacked-out figure, and in a hot tub with another redacted person. It includes more material from earlier investigations highlighting his trips and social interactions with Epstein, the very content Republicans love to point to as proof that Clinton kept bad company. Clinton has already said he regrets socializing with Epstein and insists he knew nothing about the crimes. But the Justice Department's social media operation all but put a circle and an arrow on him, with 2 official spokespeople posting images they said showed Clinton with Epstein's victims. The White House wanted the nightly newscast to play one clip, Clinton in a pool, not Trump on a manifest. Clinton's team saw what was happening in real time. Angel Urier, his former deputy chief of staff, accused the administration of trying to shield themselves by turning the spotlight onto his old boss. They can release as many grainy 20-plus-year-old photos as they want, but this isn't about Bill Clinton, he said, pointing back to the real question: why has Trump's Justice Department fought so hard to conceal its own handling of Epstein? That's not a liberal talking point. It's encoded in the law. The statute doesn't just demand photos and victim statements. It demands internal documents: who called what shots, who declined which charges, who signed off on which plea deals. None of that shows up in this first dump. Democrats in Congress wasted no time calling it what it is: noncompliance dressed up as disclosure. Senate Minority Leader Schumer said the heavily redacted documents are just a fraction of the whole body of evidence, and that DOJ has failed both the spirit and the letter of the law. House Republicans who co-wrote the law, including Thomas Massie, are furious for a different reason. Massey posted that the release grossly fails to comply with the statute he helped craft. When the author of the Transparency Act and the Senate's top Democrat are both accusing the president's own Justice Department of slowy walking and cherry picking, this is not just partisan noise. It's institutional anger. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to run the same play he always runs, point in the opposite direction. Last month, he ordered DOJ to investigate Clinton's ties to Epstein, a move critics instantly read as an effort to shift the narrative away from his own long-documented social relationship with the financier. Around the same time, House Democrats released thousands of emails from Epstein's estate, including one in which Epstein wrote that Trump knew about the girls without clarifying what that meant. Trump responded by screaming about the Epstein hoax and calling it a political distraction. House Republicans released their own slice of the email trove the same day, including an email saying Trump visited Epstein's house many times but never got a massage. That one line has already become the meme version of his defense. Zoom out further, and the picture gets uglier for the president politically. Polling from Reuters Ipsos shows that only 44% of Republicans approve of Trump's handling of the Epstein issue, compared to an 82% overall jobby approval rating from the same group. That means a huge chunk of his own base believes there is something off about how he's managed this scandal. For years, Trump fed those voters wild conspiracy theories about Epstein and the Clintons, suggesting sinister cover-ups and mysterious deaths. Now, when he's the one in charge of the files, they see him fighting transparency, delivering black boxes instead of answers, and trying to turn a bipartisan law into a partisan weapon. The boomerang is real. The context is also important. This DOJ release isn't happening in a vacuum. It comes on the heels of a separate wave of photos from Epstein's estate, released earlier this month by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. Those images, pulled from Epstein's hard drives and email accounts, show a long list of powerful men: Trump, Clinton, Bill Gates, Steve Bannon, former Prince Andrew, Larry Summers, Alan Dershowitz, Richard Branson, and others in social settings with Epstein over the years. The committee explicitly said the photos do not imply wrongdoing on their own, but raise even more questions about who was in Epstein's orbit and why. If you're a Trump voter who saw those pictures, then opened DOJ's official database and saw Clinton plastered all over it, while Trump's name mysteriously disappears from this new batch, your suspicion meter doesn't go down. It goes up. Then there's the money trail. Long before today's dump, investigators had already exposed that J.P. Morgan Chase kept Epstein as a client for 5 years after his 2008 conviction, ultimately paying about $290 million to his victims to settle claims that looked the other way on sex trafficking. That case showed how closely financial institutions are interwoven with elite predators. The new DOJ release adds almost nothing to that story. Instead of opening the books on who protected Epstein and why he kept getting sweetheart treatment, the Epstein files are mostly repeating old facts, showing old photos and hiding the internal decision making the public was promised. The law did give DOJ one legitimate excuse. It can withhold material that would jeopardize an active investigation. But if that's the justification, the department has not publicly spelled out what those active investigations are, who they target, or when those files might eventually be released. All we get is a vague promise that several 100,000 pages will be posted over the coming weeks as redactions are completed. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is the same "we'll get back to you later" pattern that fueled Epstein conspiracies for years. For an administration supposedly obsessed with ending the cover-up, it is a strange way to act. In the end, these files tell a story, just not the one the White House is trying to sell. They show that Epstein really did orbit around some of the most powerful men in the world, including Clinton and Trump. They show that banks and institutions made money off him long after his first conviction. They show that Congress had to drag the executive branch, kicking and screaming, into the light. And they show that when Trump finally had the chance to prove he was the man who would blow the Epstein case wide open, his Justice Department produced a document dump that spotlights his enemies, buries himself, and leaves the hardest questions still sitting in the dark.